Number 10. Deadpool has a breakthrough. A breakthrough. Get it? You will. There have been a few times that Wolverine has shamed and embarrassed Deadpool, especially in combat. One such time, Deadpool was actually the one looking for a fight, and so Wolverine decided to oblige him. But he didn't just do that, he also gave him some pretty witty retorts as well. You see, Deadpool was made to believe that fighting Wolverine would help resolve some issues he has with his own past. And while Wolverine not only schooled him in combat but also wisdom, at one point Deadpool asks Logan to dig deeper. Not knowing at the time what Wade is talking about at all, Wolverine responds with that deep enough murk as he stabs him through with his claws. Wolverine has always had some of the best mid-combat speeches and retorts. He also might have the mutant power of being able to leap and give you a whole speech during that one leap. Number 9. Namor gets beat in his own domain. Surprisingly, Wolverine has seemingly held his own against Namor more than once in the comics. One such time was when the two duked it out in Civil War. Their fight goes down in Wolverine's tie-in issues, mainly being featured in issue 45. Here, not only does Wolverine prove himself on land, but also in the sea, breaking into Atlantis and Namor's palace, and even managing to hold his own in combat against Namor's guards, fighting underwater. And Wolverine isn't usually the best at fighting underwater. He has an underwater suit of Iron Man's to aid him, but it doesn't seem to operate very smoothly for him. Despite this, he gets a few good hits in at Namor, punching him back for a joke that he made when he thought Wolverine was Iron Man about keeping Wolverine on a tighter leash. Yikes. In the end, Wolverine also proves himself to Namor, and despite their disagreement over who should get custody of the criminal Nitro, Namor meets him later at a bar to give Wolverine the information that he was looking for, which I think is pretty nice. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to hear about more embarrassing moments that Wolverine has doled out, be sure to head on over to Facebook and click that like, because we are going to be putting up more content over there, and there'll be lots of good stuff for you in regards to Wolverine and other heroes. Number 8. Emma Frost's dirty secrets revealed. Dirty, dirty secrets. Actually, it's not that dirty. It's not that dirty of a secret in my mind, but you know. In this moment, it appeared to be, I guess, kind of dirty. During the first Civil War, Wolverine sets out on his own mission to capture Nitro, the one behind the start of the Civil War. Basically, the catalyst, if you will. He does this against the wishes of Cyclops and Emma Frost. When Emma and Cyke confront him about it in the 2003 Wolverine series in issue 46, the issue following the one with Namor, Emma threatens to basically mind wipe him back to a 3-year-old mental capacity. Wolverine responds by putting Emma in her place by 1. reminding her that the psi shields Professor X gave him protects him against her powers, and 2. by revealing that he knows she and Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, used to, team up. Well, Emma seems pretty shocked that Wolverine knows about this and is pretty embarrassed that he outed this previous relationship of hers to Scott. Her reaction is also interesting, as it's also during Civil War I, I believe, that she discloses that Scott does know of their relationship, of her relationship with Tony in the past, in a different comic. Although, you know, maybe this happened after that, but I do believe the issue where Emma brings it up is Civil War issue number 3, and I think that was released before this issue. But maybe the continuity in canon is different than the release order, or I just found a continuity error, and that's what that is. Number 7. Size isn't everything. It really isn't in terms of battle, as is proven in the Ultimates issue number 5. You see, in the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, Hulk isn't exactly a hero. Here the Avengers are known as the Ultimates, although there is also an Avengers team in this reality, but trust me, they aren't quite the heroic equivalent to the 616 team that we know. But the Ultimates pretty much are that. As Hulk goes on a rampage downtown, the Ultimates must band together in an effort to defeat him. And to be clear, in this reality, Hulk isn't on the Ultimates. The first one up to bat to try to tackle this big beast is Giant Man, aka Hank Pym. He attempts to defeat the Hulk as, well, a giant man. But just because Hulk is smaller than Hank doesn't mean he can't still pack a punch. While Giant Man attempts to hold Hulk beneath his hands and ask him to calm down, also calling him puny, Hulk responds by jumping onto Giant Man's face and threatening to rip his head off and use it like a toilet bowl, before punching his lights out. Proving that, yeah, even if you think, well, I'm a lot bigger than the Hulk, it doesn't mean that the Hulk can't, mess you up. Number 6. Bustin' makes me feel not so good. In the case of Tony Stark, that is. While the Hulkbuster became a famous suit of armor in the Avengers film franchise, we also know it from the comics. During the events of World War Hulk, Tony attempted to use this armor to defeat the Hulk when he returned to Earth and threatened to destroy it if he wasn't given the heroes responsible for sending him into space. One of which who was responsible was Tony, who actually initially created the Illuminati group that sent the Hulk away. Tony had also created nanotech, which would in theory be capable of suppressing the Hulk's powers, actually even forcibly using it on Jennifer Walters previously, which she actually sued him for in return. However, the Hulkbuster, the nanosuppressant, even the big bombs that they attempted to use all did nothing. Hulk's pain was so intense, his anger so great, that he became powerful enough to survive all of this and remain in his Hulk form. So apparently it doesn't matter how smart you are, Tony, or how prepared. In the end, if Hulk wants to smash, he's going to continue to smash. Can't Hulk bust your way out of that one. Number 5. J'accuse. Blade is one of the newest members of the Avengers main roster, and being new, it seems that he doesn't quite understand how best to deal with other Avengers members, like former and founding Avenger member the Hulk. While Hulk is on a rampage, the Avengers attempt to intercede in Immortal Hulk issue 47, and Blade thinks he has it all figured out. He thinks that Hulk has actually been transformed into a vampire thanks to his new/old powers like being stronger at night and being able to return from the dead. Blade might know vampires, but that doesn't mean he's always right when it comes to his suspicions. Hulk's response to Blade's accusation? To ask him if he can turn into a bat, being that Blade is also part vampire. Blade responds with no, and Hulk tells him it's a good time to learn as he tosses him up high and away. He's like, hey, can you do that? You can't? Great. Bye. Number 4. Hot tubbing. While some people might focus on when Hulk beat Thor in Thor Ragnarok in the MCU when it comes to embarrassing moments, I think there is one that tops that. After the fight, Thor is taken to Hulk's private quarters, where his wounds are tended to. When he awakes with a start, he notices Hulk is also there in what appears to be a hot tub? Hulk hot tub. Thor asks Hulk about how he ended up here, and when he finds out that he crash landed on Sakaar via a Quinjet, asks him where the Quinjet is. Hulk responds by getting up out of the tub and crossing the room to where the window is to show Thor the current location of the Quinjet now. This is when Thor learns that Hulk was, naked in that hot tub, which prompts him to seemingly avert his eyes and remark on how that image is now permanently burned into his mind. Yeah, he looks pretty uncomfortable and pretty embarrassed. Oh boy. Number 3. Spider-Man. Spider-Man and Iron Man here have a bit of an interesting relationship. In the MCU, it's very father-son, but in the comics, and specifically in the Civil War event, while Tony takes Peter under his wing and even gives him some great upgrades, actually manipulates the Spider-Lad quite a little bit. Spider-Man switches to Captain America's side, and in Iron Man Volume 4, number 14, Spider-Man, alongside a few other heroes, launch a surprise attack on Tony. While Spider-Man has beaten Tony before, specifically when Tony threatened Mary Jane and Aunt May, the use of the spider armor gave Tony a ton of information about Parker's spider sense. Not just being able to replicate it for himself, but he got the information to use Peter's against him, which he does while making a nice little baseball themed strike 1, 2, and 3, fitting as they are fighting at Yankee Stadium. Number 2. Daredevil. You know what? I really liked Superior Iron Man. The story was cool, and Tony was, well, he was kind of an almost villain, honestly. Specifically, there were 2 times with Daredevil that showcased this really well. After Tony got the whole population of San Francisco addicted to a social media platform, and then began charging them subscription fees for it, trust me, it's a lot more sinister than I'm making it sound, Daredevil goes to Tony's base on Alcatraz Island to confront him, and shut him down. Obviously, that wasn't going to go the way he wanted it to. But even I didn't expect Tony to just pick him up by the throat, tell him he's always welcome but to leave the attitude at home, and then straight up just chuck the blind superhero without fear into the freezing waters of the San Francisco Bay. Cold. Literally. Number 1. Captain America. We love Civil War. Not the actual Civil War, the Marvel one. So many great examples of superheroes fighting other superheroes. But the main star of the show in this conflict is Iron Man versus Captain America. And while the climactic fight ultimately ended in a Captain America favored draw, I'd say the first major fight was definitely more of a win for Tony. In issue 3 and 4 of the main Civil War comic, a battle takes place between the forces of both Cap and Stark. While Steve is fighting Spider-Man, Iron
Man comes swooping in, attacking with an armor that's analyzed every fight Cap has ever had. And he just starts going to town on the guy, feeding him the left, right, until Cap is absolutely battered. Cap still doesn't go down, so Tony uses a high frequency that shuts down the human brain. He's about to end the fight when Hercules jumps in, attacking him with an oil tanker truck.
Number 10. Outsmarted. One of the most famous fights between the Hulk and the Thing also happens to be one of the first. This one goes down in Fantastic Four issue number 12, where the Fantastic Four are led to believe that the Hulk is the one behind a bunch of destruction, an attempt to get together to try and stop him. However, this does not end up working out very well. That's because the Hulk is not only the strongest there is, but he also manages to outsmart them almost completely. Hulk realizes that the FF have the advantage, since together they are very powerful, but if he can take them on one by one, then he stands a better chance at defeating them. That's right, it wasn't even his brute strength, but his strategy that allowed him to defeat the Fantastic Four this time around. Well, almost. The Thing seemingly defeats the Hulk with his piledriver punch, but in reality, his punch misses, and it was actually an energy ray that hit the Hulk and knocked him out. Fortunately though, this reveals to the FF that the Hulk was not behind all the destruction, and yeah. They can at least now go after the people that are actually responsible. Number 9. Illuminate the Truth. In the secondary short comic that is included in the World War Hulk prologue World Breaker, titled Round Trip, we get to see an alternate Hulk embarrass a group he refers to as the Illuminators, obviously the more cartoonish version of the Illuminati. This group ends up sending Hulk to space and another planet in a spaceship, ultimately because he stole Namor's sandwich. How does Hulk embarrass them? In a similar fashion to his plan in the reality of Earth 616, he ends up heading homeward after the group exiles him. Here he doesn't necessarily seem to have the same trauma behind him as he does on 616, fueling his rage even more, but the Illuminators are still completely in a tizzy over the fact that the Hulk ship seems to be on a return course after they sent him away. Except Namor. Namor feels safe knowing that he lives deep in the ocean and that if the surface world gets all smashed up, he and his kingdom will probably still be good. And friends, before we move on to the next spot on this list, if you love our channel and you love our content, be sure to head on over to Facebook to show us that love and support by giving us a follow and a like. I think that's one of the things you do on Facebook. You like stuff. Hey. Number 8. To Hear You Scream. Speaking of World War Hulk, one of the most embarrassing fights comes from the very beginning of that event, in World War Hulk issue number 1, when Hulk faces off against Black Bolt. Black Bolt and his queen Medusa, you see, have some ego, which ends up quickly turning into hubris for them. Black Bolt had fought the Hulk before and won, so it was for this reason that they barely even gave Hulk the time of day when he shows up. When Hulk rushes them both, angry for what has happened to his people and the planet that he freed and made his own, Black Bolt only responds with a whisper, saying, "Enough," and with the force of his words pushing Hulk far back. But Hulk ends up coming out on top as he immediately recovers and leaps back at Black Bolt. He didn't come to Attilan for a whisper, he came to hear Black Bolt scream, and it definitely seems like he makes him scream. He does not look like he's in great shape after that conversation.
Number 7. Captain Marvel and Gamora. Combo! Wham bam! Actually, more like pew pew. Look, love it or hate it, the second Marvel Civil War event happened. I could get into what the conflict itself was actually about, but that doesn't really have anything to do with this point. The main thing you need to know is that, just like the first Civil War, the superhuman community is split, with Iron Man leading one side and Carol Danvers leading the other. At the time of this story, Iron Man was sporting his Model Prime armor, an armor that could basically shapeshift and change color for whatever it was he needed to do at the time, making the need for multiple armors a little redundant. During a conflict with Captain Marvel and her group, Tony was under attack from some pretty powerful heroes. Specifically, Captain Marvel and Gamora jumped in to do battle before they were dispatched from a single blast from Iron Man. Just one shot is all he needed. Damn. Number 6. Emma Frost. Did you know the Avengers fought the X-Men? Yes, it's true. And a comic titled, get this, Avengers vs. X-Men. It's a good title. Seriously though, the conflict blossomed when the Phoenix Force is headed straight to Earth with mutant Hope Summers as its supposed host. The Avengers believe this is bad juju for the population of Earth, and the X-Men think this is gonna be what they need for the mutant population to be reborn. A battle happens between the two teams at the mutant island of Utopia. Partway through, Emma Frost comes to make a move, saying telepathically to Cyclops she can shut down the Avengers telepathically, and she is going to end this. Then Iron Man chimes in, "I bet you thought you were just about to end this," as he fires microscopic telepathic tasers at her and hopes she will let him make it up to her over dinner. She punches him in the stomach and he blasts back with his repulsors, but this genuinely made me snicker. Number 5. Facial hair bros. Right smack dab in the middle of the video, sort of, not really, I want to do something completely different. Something finally not combat related. Yet a victory for Tony and an embarrassment for none other than Stephen Strange the Sorcerer Supreme. In Invincible Iron Man number 3, Iron Man goes to Doctor Strange for help with a little problem he is having. As he's about to leave the Sanctum Sanctorum, he goes, "Thanks, Doctor," and stays there like this for 8 comic book panels, until Steven gives him a very, very reluctant high five as Tony yells, "Awesome, facial hair bros!" And Steven says, "I hate you." I'm sorry, I had to include this. Number 4. Namor. Iron Man and Namor the Submariner have always had a pretty tense relationship, both having massive egos. They have gone at it with their words and their fisticuffs multiple different times. From what I can tell, the powerful Submariner usually has the win more than often. But Iron Man isn't a pushover. He's gotten some good shots, and in Iron Man number 25 in 1970, we have an example of him winning, in a somewhat hilarious way too. Basically, unbeknownst to Tony, his company had been polluting the ocean with a pipeline. Now yes, that is very, very bad. But if you just go and talk to Tony, I'm sure he'd fix the issue. No, that is not the Submariner's way. No, instead, he attacks, destroying the pipeline and then attacking the buildings it's connected to. To subdue Namor, Tony uses the heating coils of his suit to evaporate all the water in Namor's body, basically rendering him powerless. And then he ties him up to an under construction tower using metal beams. It's kind of hilarious looking, and I feel like Namor could easily slip out of that, like the power of gravity, but it's certainly embarrassing.
Number 3, Shatterstar gets shattered. That's right, Wolverine pretty much completely embarrassed and obliterated Shatterstar in the Executioner's Song story. While Shatterstar did seem to miraculously survive here, Wolverine gave him a fistful of claws, not only embarrassing Shatterstar, but also leaving Richter pretty distraught amidst the loss of his most dearest friend. Even back in the 90s, the feelings were pretty strong between Richter and Shatterstar, as is evident here, and in many of the comics. This all went down in an epic fight between various X-teams, including a split-up X-Men roster into 2 separate teams, Blue and Gold, and X-Factor besides. Wolverine is quick to jump into action, and Shatterstar doesn't even get to show off his own impressive fighting skills much before Wolverine turns him into a shish kebab. For someone who is known for being a proud warrior, this whole display, I imagine, would be pretty disappointing for Shatterstar. While he didn't physically die from his injury here, he may have died of embarrassment. Number 2, Spider-Man gets hit where it hurts. In the heart. You can tell that this was a moment that really was upsetting to Peter Parker's Spider-Man because of how he reacts to it. At one point, when both Wolverine and Spider-Man are staying in Avengers Tower, Pete and MJ, who is also there with Peter, have a kind of a relationship scandal. A news story is basically being spread around that MJ, who is still married to Peter at the time, is having an affair with Tony Stark. While Peter is distraught about this, Wolverine takes the opportunity to make a joke at MJ's expense and at the expense of her and Peter's relationship. He says, and I quote, "Sweet Cheeks messed up big time. It's not your fault she screwed up. I mean, if she had brains to go with all that beauty, she wouldn't be with you in the first place, right?" Ouch! Peter of course reacts by pushing Wolverine so hard that he goes flying through and out of a ceiling to floor window in the high-rise that was supposed to be made of unbreakable glass. So you can tell that one probably cut real deep for Peter. Whew. Number 1, the X-Force are defeated. The defeat of Shatterstar was just the beginning for the X-Force, unfortunately, in Executioner's Song. Shortly thereafter, they would also be tracked down by Wolverine and taken out primarily by him and Psylocke, forced to surrender to the Blue X-Men and X-Factor teams. And they were backed into a corner fairly easily, I gotta say, with Wolverine choosing to hunt them down and citing it as one of the things he is best known for, which obviously here he proves he is best known for it. He's pretty good at hunting people down. Although I imagine and X-Force, like the other teams, also felt pretty conflicted about like this whole fight against their friends, so this combined with Wolverine's ruthlessness probably helped to convince them in surrendering. Still, pretty embarrassing that like basically Wolverine and Psylocke show up and they're like, hey, we're just gonna do this, and then everyone comes in at the end to be like, yeah, we're here too.
Number 10. Hulk. We all know of the famous Hulkbuster suit. But would it just blow your minds if I told you that Iron Man has defeated the Hulk without it? Yes, that's right. In Iron Man issue 132, our Golden Avenger faced off mano a mano against the strongest Green Avenger. And when I tell you this was one hell of a fight, I ain't lying. After an attempt at helping Bruce Banner results in the Hulk persona emerging, resulting in Tony donning the suit and protecting his employees, the fight goes from Stark Industries to underwater to an Air Force base where the two basically play baseball with a luggage carrier and Tony's favorite jet. The resulting explosion stunned the Hulk, and in that moment, Tony mustered every bit of solar and reserve energy he could, overriding the safety protocols of his suit to hit the stunned Hulk with a singular massive punch that knocked out Hulk and killed that suit of armor. Number 9. Sentry / The Void. This is one of those do whatever the hell I can to defeat you kind of moments. In the Marvel Siege storyline, Bob Reynolds, the Sentry, one of Marvel's Superman characters, has joined with Norman Osborn and his Dark Avengers, being somewhat taken over by the Void. In the end of the story, the Sentry, using the power of the Void, was directed by Osborn to take out the floating city of Asgard, which he did, sending it crashing to the ground. And then he de-lifed Loki. The other Avengers and Thor have not been able to defeat Sentry / Void yet, so as one last ditch attempt, Iron Man uses a whole Hammer helicarrier as a missile and crashes the whole thing down on top of him. This weakens the Void enough that Thor can end him with a blow from Mjolnir, but damn, Tony really just had enough of this guy. Number 8. Hawkeye. Surprise! Hawkeye does not stand a chance against Iron Man, but he did actually put up a pretty good fight the first 2 times they fought. Both times were in Tales of Suspense in issue 57 and 60. Hawkeye's first appearances before he was actually a hero, when he was instead a criminal. Natasha Romanoff, who is also a criminal at the time, tricks Clint into helping her steal Tony's powerful tech. It doesn't go too well for them though. At the end of the first fight in issue 57, Tony gets Clint clinging onto a pole, which he then bends and flicks like one of those little door stopper things, thwanging little Robin Hood here into the water and then saving the unconscious Clint from drowning. Doth Mother know you have not liked or subscribed? Well, that's okay if you don't want to, but it would be appreciated. Okay, let's move on.
Number 7. Is Hulk really the strongest there is? Yes, he still is, I think. He is the strongest there is. But he's not always the smartest, as is proven here in this fight against Wolverine from Incredible Hulk issue 340. Now it should be noted that in this fight, Wolverine is actually taking on the Grey Hulk, which isn't known for being one of the strongest personas or versions of the Hulk. But still, the impressive part here isn't so much even Wolverine's skill and strength as a fighter, although you're likely to be impressed by that somewhat still if you're so inclined, but the smarts and character development we see Wolverine display here. Wolverine accidentally picks a fight with Hulk by insulting him, unintentionally. Hulk responds by attempting to attack Wolverine, who manages to get the first slash and kind of dodge in successfully, but then decides to take the higher road and actually chooses to apologize to the Hulk, not wanting to fight him and attempting to fight against his own internal animalistic desire and instincts to do so. When Hulk refuses to let him go and says, "I've gotten smarter and you've gotten gutless," Wolverine replied with, "Knowing when to fight and when to walk away is more smarts than you'll ever have." Yeah, I like that. Such a good Wolverine line to Hulk. Like, I'm just like, whoo! Ouch, you're gonna need some ice for that burn, Hulk. Number 6. Cable and Bishop both get bested. I can't even believe that this happened. Cable is considered an Omega level mutant, and yet Wolverine was still able to take him down. And for reference, Wolverine is considered beta level when it comes to his abilities and his control over them more specifically. At least I think he's still considered beta level. He's definitely not Omega level, I'll tell you that much. Granted, Wolverine did have some help here from Bishop, and does at least choose to spare Cable during their fight as part of the Executioner song story. You see, he thinks that Cable is actually the one they're looking for, but really it's his evil twin Strife. Wolverine isn't quite ready to kill him dead though, not knowing about Strife, but he does have a small amount of doubt that stays in his head. So he's like, I'm just gonna hold off, because even though I think it's you, we don't know for sure. You're making me doubt it. Then when Bishop attempts to finish the job, because he's like, no way, we just hunted this guy down, we fought him, that's it. Wolverine in turn shows up Bishop by slicing his gun to pieces so that he can't actually kill Cable with it, telling him to cool off before getting another gun off the rack and getting back to sorting out this whole mess with Cable's currently very suspicious appearance and self. Even though, like we said, it's Strife, but we didn't know that yet. Or well, Wolverine didn't know that yet at least. Number 5. Jean Grey gets more help than she bargained for. Jean gets more help than she asked for from Wolverine in this issue of X-Men. In fact, she didn't even really ask for his help to begin with, but she did complain about her ability to move freely in her outfit and her struggle to kind of like tear it so that she could move a little bit more freely. Which obviously was a classic mistake, because you know Logan is always more than happy to help Jeannie gain more mobility by maybe, you know, parting with pieces of her garment. Hey, he's just trying to help her out. This all goes down in the very first X-Men Christmas special that we ever got. In this story, the X-Men are kidnapped, and it's during their daring escape that Jean complains of her inability to move freely. She's trying to like tear her dress. So Wolverine, being the gentleman he is, sees her struggling and decides to help her tear away the bottom half of her gown, freeing up her movement, but at the expense of both irritating and seemingly confusing Jean, who actually responds with, "Hey, not so blasted short. Thank you very much. I think." I just love that whole response. She's like, I'm mad, but like what even happened? Number 4. Cyclops is shamed. When Emma and Scott started seeing one another, Wolverine was pretty quick to embarrass them and shame them in front of the rest of the team. Mainly, he focused his ire on Scott, who he saw as betraying Jean's memory. And he wasn't alone either. By the way, at this point, Jean had recently died and Scott and Emma were together, but yeah, people all felt pretty weird about it. A lot of the other X-Men felt similarly, and they began to actually treat Scott differently because of his and Emma's relationship. This was because the two had started seeing one another psychically while Scott was still with Jean, but he and Marvel Girl, as she was formerly known, were having marital problems at the time. He had a psychic affair with Emma, and then after Jean died, immediately started like just being in this very public relationship with her. Wolverine even went so far as to fight Scott physically over this blossoming relationship with Emma. Don't worry though, Jean's ghost would arrive to give Scott the green light so we could all feel better about the whole thing. Jean's ghost always coming back to be like, look, everyone just be cool. I'm Jean's ghost. I am like a god. Number 3. Love frenzy. There was that one time Bruce Banner as the Hulk completely lost it, going into a frenzy that caused him to try and both chase down and like beat up She-Hulk. And not only that either. It turns out this whole attempt to do so was actually kind of part of like a mating ritual thing. It seems that Hulk forgot that She-Hulk was his cousin, because he was in a frenzied Hulk form. Luckily, Hulk didn't get his way here and was eventually set right again. Although in the Old Man Logan universe, the two do apparently end up together, and we don't really know if Jen was like here for that or not. Either way, the whole ordeal is pretty embarrassing for Jen, but also likely embarrassing for Bruce as well if he was told about it afterwards. It's just embarrassing all around, and also pretty like squicky. Ugh. Number 2. Ripped in Two. Wow, I like how I made number 2 ripped in two. I didn't do that on purpose, but that's good. When Ultimate Wolverine and Ultimate Hulk fought one another in the Ultimate Universe, Hulk pretty much put Wolverine to shame. In this alternate universe of Earth 1610, Wolverine was hired by Nick Fury to track down the Hulk. Wolverine tracked him down alright, but wasn't so good at dealing with him once he did. At one point, Hulk tears Wolverine straight down the middle and tosses his legs so far away that Logan has a challenging time recovering them. And of course I mean right down the middle, not down the middle this way, like down across the middle, I guess I should say. In this reality, Wolverine can't just grow new legs, by the way. In order to recover, he needs to find and basically reattach his legs so that his healing powers, or his survival powers more like, can basically take effect and kick in and heal him. So yeah, he had to crawl all the way over to find his legs in the snow. Great. Also, mountains. There were mountains there. Number 1. Why are you hitting yourself? While Thor and Hulk fought in Ragnarok, where Hulk only really won against Thor thanks to the help of Grandmaster, tasing Thor until he passed out, just as he was figuring out how to harness the power of lightning without his hammer too, in the comics these two have fought actually multiple times. One such occasion involved a showdown where Hulk made fun of Thor for having long hair, mistaking him for a hairy lady and telling him that he should get a haircut. Thor of course did not take too kindly to these remarks about his long golden locks, which he quite loves, and fought back against Hulk with his hammer Mjolnir. However, Thor ended up surprised when Hulk refused to surrender, claiming he was the strongest there will ever be, before grabbing Thor's hammer arm and then making Thor basically hit himself with Mjolnir. Ouch. Hey Thor, why are you hitting yourself?